Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so excited to have you all with us today. And I'm also just so excited to be introducing this space. Thank you all for joining this session, Bold Inclusion, including neurodiverse participants into your giving circle. Please note, closed captioning is available. All you have to do is click the little box that has the CC in it at the bottom of your Zoom screen. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Kelsey Barowich, and I am a program manager at Philanthropy Together. We are a global initiative working to grow and strengthen the field of collective giving with amazing programming like We Give Summit. If you have been to literally any of the sessions, and I know that you've probably been to multiple, I am leaving these sessions feeling energized and ready to go, ready to continue to build community and make change. And I hope you all are feeling the same way as well. Specifically, I am really excited to learn new skills to improve my own facilitation style to craft a more welcoming space for neurodiverse community members. Throughout today's session, please feel free to engage with us in the chat. We are going to have breakout rooms, so stick around, build those deep communities and conversations. And we also encourage you to share your feedback at the end of this session by completing our 2-question poll. And before we get started, I just want to let you all know that we are going to continue our random selection of attendees who stick with us till the end, and you'll be able to choose from one book of our amazing speakers. We have so many authors in the space this year. It's truly like, I was looking at the book list and was like, whoa, so much reading to do after this. But thank you again, everybody, for coming. We're so excited to have you. We're so excited to learn with you and build community with you. And with that, I am unbelievably happy to introduce today's speaker and hand it over to Danielle Segal of Honeycomb. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here again at the We Give Summit. So I'm so excited that all of you are coming along for the journey today. We have an interactive session for you today. So if you feel comfortable, feel free to turn on your cameras so that we can see you. And we will begin. So firstly, my name is Danielle Segal. I'm the Executive Director of Honeycomb, and you will hear a little bit more about what we do at Honeycomb in just a moment. But just to get the juices flowing, I want to give you all a little challenge, a little activity before we start. So I want you to get a notepad or some scrap paper or just something that you can type on your computer to jot down. I want you to write down as many different disabilities that you can think of. I'm going to keep it really loose and just use a general term, which is disabilities. So I want you to take a moment and write down as many different disabilities as you can think of. I'll just give you a moment to do that. All right, just a few more moments. Okay, so I want you to look at your list and I want you to put a star by the ones that are visible. From the outside, you might be able to tell if someone has a disability. So put a star by the ones that are visible. Okay. So I would love for you to pop in the chat. Tell me what you notice. What do you notice about your list? And possibly the number of stars you have or don't have. What do you notice about your list? Mm, wonderful. Okay, so we have some really interesting comments. So some people said 50-50 split, about half visible, half not. Others say we've got visible, a lot of disabilities are not visible. Um, so many were not immediately visible. Wonderful. Thank you. So why did I ask you to do that exercise at the top of this session? Because not all disabilities are visible. Sometimes there might be participants within your group, within your giving circle, and you might not even have realized that they have what is classed as a disability. So it's so important that we do this work so that we can make sure that the services that we are offering or the programs that we are offering really can be accessible to as many people as possible. And people's needs and what they need in order to join in and be successful might not immediately be noticeable to you. So this is a really great reminder to us to pause and take stock and make sure that what we are doing is accessible to whichever participants want to join in with our group. So I'm going to just start sharing my screen just so we can all follow along and just explain a little bit about who we are and what we do. So my name is Danielle. As I said, I am the Executive Director of Honeycomb. Who is Honeycomb? We are the leading resource for Jewish youth philanthropy. So what does that mean? So we drive innovation in philanthropy education, and we do this in a multitude of ways, mainly by creating tools, curriculum, training, professional development, whatever organizations need in order to deliver really high quality experiences of philanthropy education. And really, we're here to build the future of philanthropy for young people. So what are we covering today? So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what youth philanthropy is. And the reason I'm going to go into that, some of you might have young funders or a group that you're working with you in your giving circle with young people, but also it sort of helps contextualize the guide and what we're talking about today as far as including neurodiverse people into your spaces. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background about how our work developed in this area of including different people within your programs. And then we're going to walk through our guide. So we have developed with experts in the field a really wonderful inclusion guide that helps you, again, take stock and understand what you need to do in your program in order to make it more inclusive. And it's also got really concrete activities and examples and glossaries and everything you might need in order to do that. So we are going to walk through it, and we're also going to demo some activities from there as well. And then we're going to quickly also see how you can implement some of these methods into your program or into your giving circle. And we'll also have a little bit of time for Q&A as well at the end. So just a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. While I'm sharing my screen, it's a little hard to see the chat box, but if you put your questions in there, I'll be able to get to them as we take breaks in the middle. And hopefully I can get to all of your questions. So, little bit of background. So, what is youth philanthropy? So, this is kind of a little elevator pitch of youth philanthropy, but really it is guided by values. Young people are given the opportunity to engage in hands-on charity or giving through strategic grant making. And that's really key. It's about young people coming together and making a collective decision about where funds are being allocated. It is essentially like a giving circle, but for young or teen participants. They might be giving a little bit of their own money, or there might already be a pool that they are responsible for giving away. So this is real. These teams are giving away real money. This is not a simulation. They're making real decisions about real funds. And that kind of strategic grant making bit is about that collective grant making. So it's not necessarily an individual putting some money in a charity box, although that is great too. This is about young people making decisions all together collectively. Programs can be very different sizes, just like giving circles could be different sizes. Some are very small and some are very large. And all programs, they might look a little bit different depending on what organization they're housed in. But they go through a genuine grant making cycle. So the general arc of a program is they explore values, their own values, and what issues they care about. They might research and do understanding about nonprofits and what issue area they want to examine. They choose a mission statement. They might do fundraising. They send out real requests for proposals into the world. They get real proposals back. They go on site visits, and then they make a real granting decision. So really, they are forming like a genuine foundation in order to grant money. So the why. So really, this is a moment of empowerment and responsibility. The teams are really, they are taking on that responsibility of granting the money responsibly and doing their due diligence. The really key moment of identity building. They get to do values exploration, explore different ideas and content around giving and philanthropy. Really genuine leadership skills. This is really the opportunity to be a leader, especially if there's like a multi-year setting and they do this year after year. And really it's giving them kind of lifelong skills in this area. They also get a really great real world understanding of nonprofits because they're understanding the lexicon of philanthropy and how things work and how to dig deeper in order to make informed decisions and how budgets work. And that's kind of all part of it too. And it's really instilling from an early age that lifelong connection to giving, which we see as really important. And really, anyone can be a giver. This is about democratizing philanthropy, and young people and teens can do this program, whether it is like their own personal wealth or not. It really fosters also a deeper connection to community, the community that they're forming as part of their group, and also the money that they are granting outwards. And it's also a really great way to reach new participants. I mean, there are so many different doors to engagement that people might have in their community. And philanthropy just might be one of them, especially if people are involved in change-making activities or are interested in learning more. So looking at this list, the why of philanthropy, this is such a great and powerful list. And we want to make sure that these opportunities of the why are available to as many people as possible. So we really want to think about how are we making our spaces open and accessible and really kind of really welcoming for those who are who are neurodiverse, who might feel that they wouldn't be able to come, and we really want to make that welcoming space. So why do we need to be aware of inclusion? So just because we don't know who in our sphere has a disability or might not be considered neurotypical, you might have people in your group, or you might have a group of young people or people who want to do your program or your giving circle who have a disability. You just might not know about it. So really we want to eradicate this notion of this doesn't apply to me. Oh, I don't have anybody who's neurodiverse in my group. This doesn't apply to me. We want to eradicate that thinking because there are so many different needs in our groups, and we want to make sure that anyone who wants to join in can. So even if you don't think you might have someone with a disability, you actually might. And we also want to make sure that it's open to those who do. And really, everyone can benefit from a more inclusive framework. A really great example of this is when you've got streets with that lower bit in the curb where you have the curb cuts, and they are made for people who are in wheelchairs so that they can get up onto the curb. That ramp is also very useful for other people too. It's useful for people who have strollers or any kind of like wagon that they're driving along. So that accommodation that was made in the road specifically for disabilities actually creates a better better urban planning for all. So really we can all benefit from a more inclusive framework. And we also really want to think about who are we leaving out? Who could be part of our groups where it'd be so beneficial to have them there? But because of the way that we're using our messaging or the way that we've set up our space, we're unfortunately leaving them out. So the resource that we're going to walk through was specifically made for a teen group to include teens. However, it is so transferable and relevant for adults as well. So for the people here in our group, you might be working with adults, you might have a mixed giving circle, you might be working with teens, but everything that we're kind of covering today can be used for any age. So just a couple of stats. So 20% of all Americans identify as having a disability. So that's 1 in 5. This is not an insignificant number. Particularly about young people, 1 in 5 teens receive special educational support in school. And as we mentioned before about our list with our stars and the ones without stars, most of those supports are for those with what might be considered invisible disabilities. And 1 in every 10 teen or preteen has been diagnosed with some kind of disability. So here's also a nice bit of an interesting bit of research here that children that are involved in more inclusive environments develop more empathy and more social skills. So it is really enriching that anyone who is involved in a more inclusive environment benefits. So this research is particularly about children, but that obviously follows on through adulthood too. So I thought that was a really interesting piece of research there. So we are going to walk through our guide very soon. So I can kind of pull out some key pieces and we can demo a little bit from it. So a little bit of an overview. This guide was developed by Honeycomb and 2 wonderful people, Sandy Gold and Leah Goldstein. So we use this program in Boston. It was used with an existing philanthropy program, and they partnered up with an inclusion nonprofit called Gateways, and they ran the program for years. They refined those methods, and we actually used that program, tried and tested it in order to make this more universal guide. So what we're looking at here really is everything that's in the guide is really transferable to many settings, not just kind of the youth program that it is set up for. There are tips and instructions and concrete activities and everything you might need in this guide. So what's great about this guide is it is available for free. So you will all be able to download it. It was part of our Foundation Board Incubator, which was funded by Laura Lauder and the Maimonides Fund. And so therefore this, so as kind of a service to the field, this is available to everyone. So this guide is split into 3 sections. There's like the getting started section, which has some really great kind of tips and things to think about. The next section is adapting your session for diverse learners. So like, what do you do already and how can you enhance it to include everyone? And then the third section is that for those who want to set up a dedicated program with a mixed group of neurodivergent and neurotypical participants in a way that they partner up and they mentor each other. So we're going to go through each section. I'm not going to read through the whole guide. That would be silly. You can do that on your own. But I am going to highlight some important things as we go along. And I'm also going to demo a couple of activities as well. So this might already this guide really acts as like a supplement or an enhancement for what you might already be doing. But if you want more information or you want to do something in a bigger way, feel free to contact us at Honeycomb. So I will reiterate, this guide was aimed at teen participants, but it is really transferable to adults as well. So think about who your participants are or who your participants might be in the future, and see what you can extrapolate from this piece. So I think I've talked enough about it. So now let's all look through it together. So I'm just seeing if there are any questions in the chat so far. Okay. Oh, thank you, Kelsey, for adding the link there, so that you can download it and use it. But if it's easier for you, you can just follow along on the screen with me so that you can see where we are up to. Okay, so let me bring it up so that you can all see. Okay, so you should be able to see the front cover of our guide. Can I get a thumbs up that everyone can see? Wonderful. Fantastic. I'm going to make this a little bigger just so that we can all follow along. Okay. So firstly, a nice place to start. This is where I always generally like starting, is the contents page, just because it gives you a nice overview of what is inside. And here you can see these 3 sections. You've got the getting started, adapting your sessions, and setting up a dedicated program with team mentors. So just to see kind of like how it's all laid out. So I want to draw attention to, so there's some great intro and preamble, but what I want to draw your attention to is this getting started page. So there's a section here really about language and vocabulary. And what we say matters. It really matters, and people hear us, and the words that we use are really important. So I wanted to just highlight this for you. We offer a little glossary. It's very short, but just to give you a little idea of some of the lexicon that is used, and this is, again, a very short list. But think about what words we use. You heard me earlier talk about disability and things being classed as a disability. There are official classifications for disability. And we have a little note here about the fact that disability is not a bad word. This is not a derogatory term. This is a diagnosis. And how people want to use the word and how they want to be, what language they want to use is really important. We've got a little note here about person first language. There is also a general feeling in the autism community that you would say that someone is autistic rather than it is a person with autism, because it's not something that is broken that needs to be fixed. It is actually a part of who they are. It is a wonderful thing. It is like a part of their identity. So they generally, on the whole, the community prefers non-person first language, whereas other disabilities prefer first person language. However, ask people what they prefer. Make sure people are comfortable with the language that you are using, especially if you have specific people who are coming to your program. Ask the question and make sure that you are using language that everyone feels comfortable with in that space when you're bringing them in. And it changes. It's fluid. Language is fluid. And 1 year, a certain word might be fine, and a couple of years later, there's been a revision and that word is not okay anymore. So really just ask, be inquisitive, do some research, and make sure that you're using really great language. There's also a note here on page 7 about finding partner agencies, and this is really key. If you have a small giving circle and you're not entirely sure where to go from here, there are some really great partner agencies that do this work. This is what they think about all the time. This is what we did. We spoke to Gateways. They are such a wonderful organization. This is what they do. They live in the world of inclusion. So we sought experts in order to create this guide. So if you ever need help finding a partner agency in your area who might be able to help you with that, we can probably point you in the right direction. So think about who are these experts that you can partner with. Also, I just want to draw your attention to this little checklist, because this is just a really useful stock check of questions to ask yourself when you're thinking about opening up your giving circle or your programs. What is the ideal number of participants? Do you need a different number of mentors? How long should your sessions be when you all meet? Do you need an extra facilitator or someone to hold the space? Do you need a particular ratio of facilitators to participants? Are there any best practices that you can employ? So this is kind of a really nice stock check for you and good questions to ask yourself. And then just a little word about accessibility physically. So we have just a little bit in this guide about that. And we know that sometimes you might be using an inflexible space. There might be somewhere without an elevator, or there could be somewhere that has confusing signing and there's nothing that you can do to change that. So just do your best. If you're in a space or you're able to choose a space which is accessible, wonderful. But if you're not, think about what are the little accommodations that you can do in order to make it as accessible as possible. So just whipping through. So the next big session is adapting your sessions for diverse learners. So maybe you already have your pattern set up, you know what you're doing in your giving circle, but you want to adapt it and make it more of a welcoming space. So you might not need to reinvent the wheel. You can keep your program, keep what you were doing, but just adjust it where necessary. So on page 10, there are some really great get to know you activities that we like doing at the beginning of sessions. And these get to know you activities have been tried and tested and been successful in mixed ability groups. There are many more that you could do as well, but these are some really great ones. And I want to demo one of them with you now. So in a moment, we are going to go off into breakout groups, 3 or 4 per breakout group. And what you're going to do in your group is you're going to have a little conversation with the people who are in there. And I want you to find something that all of you in the group have in common. The more unusual, the better. So you are going to find something that you all have in common. And it can't be we are all at the We Give Summit. That would be too easy. But the more unusual, the better. And find something that all of you in the group have in common. So, and then we will loop back and debrief a bit when we get back. We are going to magically send you into breakout groups. So I think the wonderful tech people will make this magically happen. We're just going to have a few minutes in your breakout group, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, to chat with your group and find your thing that you all have in common. So go off and chat, and I will see you in just a few minutes. Hi, people just coming back into the space. Hello. Hi, everyone. Wonderful. Welcome back. Okay, so would anybody like to share from their group what was the one exciting or unusual thing that everyone had in common? Sarah, your hand is raised. What was the thing that you all had in common?
Hi. So Sherry and I, started just bouncing things that we have in common. And both of us are moms. Both of us live on the West Coast. Both of us like Mexico. But I think the most uncommon one that we found is that both of us took ballet classes growing up. Totally random, but both of us took classic ballet when we were growing up.
I love that. That's great. So thank you for feeding back. And I'd love to hear all your great things in common, but we don't have time today. But I do want to talk a little bit about why we do that exercise. So first of all, it gives participants the opportunity to speak in smaller groups, those who might be overwhelmed by bigger group conversation. Also, talking about yourself, finding out about someone else, obviously it builds group dynamic, which is important. But also it is a really great exercise in finding common ground and understanding what each other is about. So it's a really it sounds like a really simple exercise, but it is such a good conversation starter and a way to really get to know who is in the room, even with and especially with a mixed ability group. Thank you for doing that little demo. I have one more little demo up my sleeve. But for now, I'm going to go and share our guide again so that I can walk through a couple more key pieces in our guide. So on pages 11 to 14, there are some really great general suggestions. I'm not going to read them all out to you because you can follow along, but some really good suggestions about what you can do in order that you can already add into your existing program or giving circle to make things really accessible for anyone. So a bit about previewing and talking about transitions and how to schedule things and how we give directions and how we allow people to focus in different ways. So this is just and also like how we give people breaks. So there's some really great advice in there about what you can set up. Again, really good stock check for your own programs. And the other thing I wanted to draw your attention to is this little section about alternatives to whole group discussions. You might be really great at being in a situation with a lot of people and just throwing your opinions out and having a chat with everyone. But that might not be easy or possible for a group of diverse learners or diverse people in your group. So we've given you some really great alternatives to whole group discussions. So smaller discussions, doing it verbally, doing it visually, doing it writing down. So we have a couple of different frameworks that you can try, which is you get to the same point, which is you want to hear people's opinions, you want to discuss, you might want to make a decision, a granting decision, and rather than doing it in a full group discussion, you can do it in these other ways as well to be really cognizant of diverse learners. So actually, I want to demo one with you. This one would normally be done in person, but through the wonders of Jamboard, we're going to do a little online version. So I am putting the link in the chat to a Jamboard. So you can go onto that Jamboard, and this is a 4 corners activity. So this is a physical activity. This is just like one way of expressing your opinion rather than doing a full group discussion. So if you imagine that there are 4 signs up on your wall, agree, strongly, strongly disagree. And you would have a phrase or a statement, and you get people to stand on the 4 corners, depending on whether they agree or whether they don't agree. So I've given you a sentence in the middle that you can see on your Jamboard. Our sentence is, it's better to give locally first before giving globally. It's a statement that you may or may not agree with. So what I want you to do with is, because we aren't here in person, instead you are going to represent yourself in little sticky notes in the Jamboard. So please go to the left-hand side of the Jamboard and you can see the 4th icon down is a little post-it note. So add your name to a post-it note, make it small so we can fit everyone's, and please place it to represent where you might stand in your 4 corners. So I'll give you a moment to add your post-it note to our Jamboard. I'll just give you another few moments to stand in your corner. Okay. I'm actually going to share the screen with the Jamboard because it looks great. There we go. So we can see from our virtual room with our 4 corners, our 4 signs, you can see where people are standing, and they are expressing their opinion, whether they agree or strongly disagree, however they feel. And at that point, you might want to ask someone, oh, okay, well, can you talk a little bit more about that if they feel comfortable? Or it's a great stock check. You can just see where people are standing, and it gives you a great visual representation of what people are thinking and feeling. So in the interest of time, again, I would love to ask you, why did you stand there? But we just don't quite have time today. But this is a really nice exercise, a nice alternative to whole group discussions. Whole group discussions can be intimidating. They can be too noisy. It can be difficult to express yourself verbally. So we want to think about other ways that we can express our opinion in a giving circle situation. Okay, so we've whipped through quickly section 1 and 2 of the guide. So I'm just going to do a little bit about section 3, which is about setting up a dedicated program. So this is if you want to set up a giving circle, which is open to those with neurodiverse participants and neurotypical. And this is a way of doing it so that you actually set up mentors. So they have little partnerships as well within your giving circle, so that they can support and learn from each other, and you get opinions from all groups, from a diverse group of participants. This is how the program was set up in Boston. The teams applied separately to be part of this group. And also the teams were trained by the experts at Gateways to work with different types of learners. And because they were working with young people, it was important that everyone was prepared and everybody understood, and that the teen mentors, as they were called, were fully trained in order to do so. And there are some really great activities in here, which are disability awareness activities. So this was part of the training for those who were being set up as being the mentors. They had some really wonderful activities to help them kind of become aware, or at least start to think about how different people process information. How, as we said about group discussions, how for some people, big group discussions are great, and for others, it's really complicated and it's difficult. So really allowing them to have awareness of where different people are coming from, so that they can be more aware. It doesn't mean they're going to learn everything. You can never learn everything about what everybody feels and what everybody needs. But if you're aware, if you can ask questions, and if you can set up your program or your giving circle for success in that way. So there are a few activities there which I just wanted to point out because they're really great activities. I'd also say that if you are a giving circle that just generally focuses on inclusion work and disability work, and looking at neurodiverse end grant recipients, these are also just really great activities for you to do yourself as well, so that you can also be more aware of what needs might be, or just a little exploration of what those needs might be. It's not, obviously you still need to speak to experts and really understand the field, but if that is your mission of your giving circle, or it's an area you want to explore, there's some nice activities for you to do that. And again, this is specifically for setting up, this section is specifically for setting up pairings between neurodiverse and neurotypical participants, but really you can use these in a multitude of settings as well. So that was a very, very quick whip through of the guide and what is in it. Like I said, I'm not going to go through the whole thing because you can look at it. You can look at it yourself. But I just want to talk a little bit about how and where you might implement some of these elements, some of these activities into what you are doing when you are running your giving circles or your giving experiences. So you might be interested in starting a mentor program. Great. This might give you some ideas on how you might want to do that, and as I said, if this is something that you want to have more information about, we can help you with that. You might just want to include just some of these activities within your giving circle. You might want some icebreakers. You might want a way to engage different people, to create community. And these activities are really good, and again, a really good stock check for you. So this is also a really good like inventory, like what is happening in my giving circle? Am I doing this? Am I disseminating information about my giving circle in different ways? How am I advertising it? Is there are there different versions? Is the font I'm using big enough when I'm presenting materials? Whatever it might be, this is a really great checklist and stock check for you. Again, this might not be reinventing the wheel, but maybe it's just adapting some of your existing materials to adhere with certain best practices. And again, just a reminder, you might not realize that someone in your group actually needs some accommodations and would really appreciate some accommodations. So it's always great to ask, to check that everyone can join in and that they can share their opinions. And as we looked at the very, very beginning, it might not be immediately noticeable. So being curious, asking questions, and making sure that you're kind of aware of who you have in your space. So I have 2 minutes. So I want to see if there are any questions in the chat. Kelsey dropped in a couple of resources. So thank you so much for adding those. Great. Someone made a comment about, not all kids learn at the same pace. Absolutely. Not all adults engage at the same pace either. So it's, we often think of it as, education is for kids, but it's for everyone. And especially, when we're setting up our giving circles or our giving programs, we want to be aware that people have different needs. So I just want to double check and see if there are any other questions at all that we can pop in the chat. Someone shared the love of Think, Pair, Share. Yes, we love Think, Pair, Share. It is a really good methodology that is in the guide. So thank you for the shout out. Okay. So I do see a question about accommodations and asking people what accommodations they need. As we have at the front of the guide, that the being disabled or the word disabled, this is not a bad term. This is about making sure that people have what they need in order to be successful, and that looks different for everybody. So asking on a form like will you require closed captioning for the Zoom meeting we're about to have? That might be a great question to ask. Or do you need any accommodations in order to submit your application for this job? I think you particularly asked about job or like applying to a giving circle. So really being curious and asking the questions is really important as well. Can this work for a mixed group of kids and adults? Yes, absolutely. We love intergenerational giving experiences. We're all about that in Honeycomb as well. Yes, absolutely. You might want to seek some experts as far as kind of like child development as well as adult development if you're doing mixed age and mixed ability. But yes, totally possible. Okay, so I am out of time. I'm so sorry, but I see there's really great conversation in the chat, and I wish I could get to everything. I guess if we could go over to Hoover as well and add extra questions in the chat, but I think I'm going to be Oscar music played off in just a second.
Don't worry about it. Thank you so much, Danielle. This was a great session. I am a facilitator and someone who identifies as neurodiverse, so I really enjoyed it. I always joke with my team that I always have my fidgets right next to me, particularly during long Zoom sessions where you have to stay focused. But again, thank you so much. I super appreciate all of your valuable insights on building inclusive spaces for neurodiverse participants, particularly as it relates to facilitation. Before we wrap up, please make sure to answer our 2-question poll. I also just want to re-highlight the resources that I shared in the chat. Personally, I have loved the book, The Future is Disabled. I highly recommend it. It is phenomenal. But I also recommend checking out the Disability and Philanthropy Forum. They specifically have a page on the intersection of racism and ableism, so definitely go check that out. In the next few days, you'll be able to find a recording of today's session to revisit. And I just want to name the winner of today's raffle is India Stewart. Our team is going to follow up with you via email in the coming days to confirm the book of your choice, as well as mailing details. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Join us for the next session that will be starting very, very soon. Make your voice heard. That is incorrect. Let me double check that. Sorry, y'all. But our second keynote is coming up tomorrow, Giving Circles and the Opportunities to Become Anti-Racist, a conversation with Dr. Ibrahim X. Kendi and Jacqueline Martinez Garcel. We hope to see you at the next session. Thank you all so much for attending and your feedback. And let's get that music going so we can get our dance on before we switch to our next session.